made me sound so great. I appreciate it.
Well, welcome to Tennessee.
Yeah, this has been great.
Riashi family,
Not my
too.
first time.
Thank you for being with us.
Great, look at those smiles.
Yes. Well, good morning. My name is Annalisa Roberts. I work at Williamson Inc. in the Office of Economic Development, and I've been with this team for about 6.5 years. And for the last 3-ish years, I've led economic development recruitment efforts as well as retention. So my job has been to work with individuals like Nick and other consultants who help businesses make relocation decisions. I also spend probably 70% of my time working with existing industries. So I know we have many faces in the crowd today that represent that. And if that's you, thank you for your investment in Williamson County and the way you employ Tennesseans here in our community. Okay, Nick, tell us about your work. Tell us about Consultant Connect. It's yours.
Stage is mine, huh? Awesome, love it. Well, I'm just curious, show of hands, who here understands what a site selector is?
Okay.
All right, so not too many. I mean, my family didn't even raise their hand. I've been doing this for 10 years, right? I really think they're here just to make sure I actually have a job. Yeah, I mean, right now, site selection is the process when a company is looking to, expand or relocate. They'll use a site selection firm in order to help make that decision. And a lot of this, is boards, for these major companies, right? I mean, these CEOs, they don't want to make a mistake.
Right.
Right. They want to hire a firm. Sure. Yeah, they want to hire a firm to make sure that they're, making the right decisions. Now, these site selection firms really, it's kind of counterintuitive. A lot of people think like their job is to select the site. No, their job actually is to almost eliminate the site. So their job really is to tell them where not to go. But they'll look at data, right, and figure out, hey, what is the best place to be? But when I started doing this 10 years ago, the first site selector I ever met, Kathy Musio at Insight, she's fantastic. She's one of the best in the business. I said, what is this, right? What is site selection? But she told me the most important thing, why do you do this? Why do economic developers need to meet with site selectors? Is because she said, and I still remember it today, she said, you can have all the right metrics on paper. Everything can make sense on paper. But if you don't have a great relationship with the economic development organization, a lot of times you don't get the call. And they really need to have the relationship in order to know that they have almost a team member that is on the ground with them, helping them make that decision. So that relationship between site selectors and economic development organizations it's more critical now than ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's been my role, Nathan's role, is to get to know those folks so that when they have a project like an Alliance Bernstein or an In-N-Out Burger, they call us and say, hey, what do you have? Like, I know that your team, Nashville's same way, I know your team is good to work with, but what do you have available? And that's our job, is to market those sites. And by sites, we mean primarily in Williamson County commercial real estate office locations. But at Williamson Inc., we represent the 6 municipalities within Williamson County. So that looks different for each community, right? Each community has its own priorities of how they want to utilize their resources. And so our job is to bring to the communities what we have or brought either by the state or TVA or consultants and say, is this a good fit for you? Okay, so with that conversation, we talk about bringing a company in or companies that are here expanding, creating more jobs. What does growth mean for a community? And what are some misconceptions about growth?
Yeah, I mean, growth doesn't always have to mean attracting companies, right? I mean, I know that, there's communities out there that say, hey, I don't really want to get bigger, right? So I think using that term growth a little bit loosely and saying, hey, growth can mean different things. Yeah. It can mean making housing affordable.
Yeah.
It can mean, retaining the talent that you have, right? I mean, your future is in your K through 12 system, in your education system here. So making sure that you have the right programs in place to where, a high school student is going to say, hey, I want to make Williamson County home, right? I mean, that can be growth, right? So I think it's important to understand what metrics you are focused on for growth. But like I said, it doesn't have to necessarily mean, hey, we need to attract a manufacturing company that's going to bring 500 jobs, right? I mean, that might not be what you want. But growth just means different things for
for each community, right?
Right.
It also means accessibility, in my mind, access, right? I think of Fairview right now, looking at getting their first ER and emergency care, like that is growth, right? That's access and a higher quality of life for people who live there. So that's a huge win for those communities.
Yeah.
What role do economic development organizations and their stakeholders, so I'm thinking their boards, elected officials, you have a number of those in this room. We have some really important elections in our community this year. What role do they play in these conversations?
Yeah, and I'll just tell you, we work with 400 clients around the country, and the biggest issue right now is a disconnect between boards and economic development organizations, and it's to no fault of anybody's else. It's just that there's oftentimes not a clear vision that's set, and there's times where boards and stakeholders and economic development organizations aren't getting together. And I'm not saying that's here. I'm just saying across the country that there's a big disconnect in messaging, right, in what's important.
Yeah.
I think of if you think of Williamson County think of them as a Fortune 500 company. Let's say the county was a company, right? The economic development organization is the CEO. They're driving so many things that the community may not even know about, right? So you have to almost treat the EDO as the CEO, and you have to have your board be engaged in every conversation that they're having, so they're aligned with what the vision is. But I think it's really, really important to come together. Right? It's not just you saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's not the board saying, hey, this is what you should do. It's a collaborative effort to where you say, hey, let's figure out what is the vision for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. There has to be a long-term vision. So I think the board, the stakeholders, elected officials have to be in line with the EDO and come together and figure out what that looks like.
I think at Williamson Inc., we've done a really good job. Our board is really diverse, industry, in terms of nonprofit. We have a really diverse board that helps us as we're making decisions and gives us that industry perspective that we wouldn't have. We don't know what's going on day to day in the nonprofit sector or day to day in a Fortune 500. So having that input into how decisions are made and good relationships with our elected officials has been crucial for us as an organization. How should we, as an economic development organization, engage elected officials in this work, right? You have a lot of times, and I'll say this, having worked many projects myself, where a consultant says, do not bring elected officials on this visit. We don't want them in the early stages. So then what is their role in a project or as a project is worked? But like best practices, I guess is what I'm asking for.
Yeah, I think it's figuring out, I think like right now infrastructure is a big deal, right? Figuring out what makes sense, what do you need long-term in order to be successful. So I think figuring out what that looks like. Again, I think it just really comes down to a collaboration. I think it comes down to, an elected official visiting a local company that's here and saying, hey, what do you need? Right? Tell me about your workforce. Most companies right now are having trouble finding really, really good talent, right? And it's that village council member or elected official going in and saying, hey, tell me about your struggles. What do you need? How are you finding the right talent? How can we figure out how to, give the right skills to the next generation coming up? So I think it's, again, it's knocking on the door and figuring out, having them work together with each company here and saying, hey, how can I help you?
Absolutely. We've been fortunate to have Mayor Moore, who's Franklin City Mayor, as well as Mayor Rogers Anderson, who's leaving us this year, come along with those visits. And it just means so much for them to say, hey, thank you for being here. We're grateful. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about incentives.
Oh boy.
We can't talk about economic development over here without talking about incentives to some extent, right? So define that for us and talk about why it matters. Does it matter? Why it matters? And how are those used from time to time as projects are worked? And when we talk about projects being worked, we're talking about relocation or growth expansion opportunities for businesses that are already in a community.
Sure. Yeah, incentives think of it as, if it's a tie score, incentives oftentimes can kind of be the tiebreaker. Incentives, they don't make a bad deal good, they make a good deal better, right? So I think in Williamson, right, you have so many things that are going for you, right? You don't need to necessarily throw cash at a bunch of projects in order to attract them, right? You have great schools, you have great quality of life, You don't necessarily need to do that.
Right.
However, right, there are a lot of your competitors that are doing that, right? And there are, companies that will say, hey, they're giving me X amount of dollars. I mean, I think it makes sense for us. Now, some of that's on the company. The company needs to sometimes look at what the long term is of why, hey, this is actually a better choice versus the all cash deal up front. But I think if you can get creative with the incentive packages that you're putting together and make it sense, take Williamson County, right? I think, housing is a big deal right here, right?
Sure,
And it's
absolutely.
figuring
Our
out a
biggest
way.
challenge.
Yeah, there's a chance here you can price people out here in Williamson County, right? So if you can put an incentive package together for a company that may tie into, hey, how can you help make infrastructure better here? How can you help make housing more affordable, right? There might be more creative ways to just do it than throw cash at a company. So that's where I think coming in and working with TVA, working with the state, right? Those are things that you can do and say, hey, Tennessee Valley Authority, hey, how can you help us with our infrastructure here? Hey, state, what do you need from an infrastructure standpoint to where we can make a creative incentive package for a company that will help invest in that? And it's, again, not just writing them a check.
That's right. And that's a good point. So in Williamson County, and we have, or in Tennessee as a whole, TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, is one of our greatest partners. So they have dollars, economic development dollars that are used for a number of things. They help rural communities with site prep, or they help other communities with infrastructure issues. For us, I have never worked a project, and Nathan as well, my predecessor in this work and our Chief Economic Development Officer, have never worked a project in which TVA did not come to bat with us. Same with the state of Tennessee. So the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. Also, those two come to the table. So in fact, in Williamson County, we've only done 14 incentive deals since 1992. It's just not a lever we use very often because we don't have to. Tennessee and TVA are such competitive partners, and that's not everywhere. So if you go out west, they don't always have these cooperatives like TVA. Sometimes it's done, utility companies are done individually, and it's just an entirely different game. So to have those two partners, to your point, we don't have to come to bat with a cash deal often because of that. Now, I'll start in and out, and some of those deals where they're bringing huge jobs like that, in some ways it's a show of, it's not a lot of money, right? It's a, but it's a way of saying, we want to be your partner. We know that you're bringing jobs to this community, and not just jobs right now, but jobs for generations. And so we want to come to that, and that's, of course, in our committee voted on by the county commission. But it's an important tool to have. But I like what you said about it does not make a bad deal good. It's just not.
No, and you mentioned TVA too. Just so y'all know, power is everything right now across the board. Most projects now are starting with the local utility. They're calling TVA before they call Annalisa. They're saying, hey, we have this amount of power that we need. Do you have it, right? And if you check that box, then we can talk. But right now, power is everything across the board. So your relationship with TVA and them knowing what you're looking for is critical right now.
They're great partners, and I think that's a good time to talk about what we are looking for. When we're spending a lot of our early conversation on recruitment. That's actually about 30% of the work that I do, our organization does. But we'll talk more about expansion in a minute. But when we talk about what we're recruiting for in Williamson County, the wise leaders long before me decided that we were going to be at Nissan. We talked earlier about the Nissan headquarters investment. Decided that we wanted to be a decision maker town. We wanted this community to be a place where decisions were made for a variety of sectors. We've got automotive, we've got consumer goods, we've got all kinds of different headquarter operations here. And so those decisions were made for a couple reasons. And one is that decision makers are oftentimes resilient in an economic downturn. So you think about something like manufacturing or other industries where there's some volatility depending on sector, right? There are also higher wages. And so when we talk about recruiting companies and what we're specifically looking for, or when consultants call me and say, hey, we got this, if it doesn't meet the metrics of what we're looking for, and our community has said what those metrics are, high wage, decision maker jobs. We also were looking at some really unique biotech R&D, science driven careers. We bypass a lot of opportunities because they just aren't what our community is looking for. So I wanted to make sure and throw that out because we talked earlier about how communities define themselves of what that community character is going to be or what kind of jobs they're creating for, and we're pretty specific here.
Well, I spent the last couple of days here, and I mean, we drove around Franklin and Williamson County. We went to Pinkerton Park yesterday with the kids, but I mean, just driving through your community. I mean, you're a corporate executive's dream, right? I mean, this is exactly where they would want to land, right? I mean, quality of life right now. We talked about power. Quality of life it's in the top 3 for things that corporate executives are looking for. And a lot of it is what we did this week, right? I mean, when they're making a decision, they're bringing their leadership team, their executive leadership team, and they're bringing their trailing spouse, they're bringing their kids, and they're saying, hey, could we do 20 years in Williamson County, right? I mean, that stuff really matters more than it ever did because they weren't necessarily always doing that, right? They were using more of the data and saying, hey, let's just look at the numbers and say, hey, what makes sense for the bottom line? But, corporate leadership right now is saying, hey, we want to go where we're going to be happy.
Yeah.
So.
And it's good, we talked a little bit about regionalism in the first conversation, but being in Williamson County with such good relationships with our neighbors has proven to be a good strategy as well. We get a lot of inquiries about certain relocation decisions made that may not work for us, but we're great. We have great partnership with Rutherford County, with Murray County, with Davidson County, and say, hey, check them out. This we don't have land to sell you, but talk to them because they might. And that partnership, same with workforce. Our housing is expensive, right? But how about you go talk to my friend Patrick in Rutherford County because they have some options that might work for you, and we know that those people are going to commute back and forth, or they may live in. So it's really kind of a rising boat. What is it?
I mean, that's rising tide lifts all ships. Yeah, I mean that's huge. I mean to have that relationship, and I didn't know that. Just kind of doing some research, before we got here. But I mean, you have a quarter of your population that really that's it, can afford a home, right? So I mean, being able to attract talent, right? It can be tough to get them to live here, but having those relationships with regional partners and saying, hey, we have a company that's moving here. I know we're struggling with housing here, but everybody's struggling with housing. But we know that they're not going to be able to live here, but
not all of them for sure. That's certainly true.
Yep.
Okay, so let's spend some time on existing industry. Talk a bit about the impact of existing industry on new business recruitment, and then talk about best practices for supporting existing industry. I mean, you meet with people like me all over the country. Who do you see doing that well, and what can we learn from them?
Yeah, I mean, the business attraction part in this industry is the sexy piece, right? It's the
fun piece.
It is. It's the thing that the CEO of the organization or the elected official, it's the governor says, hey, we attracted 1,000 jobs. Right? It's the headliners. The communities that are doing it well are saying that we're not trying to recruit the next Amazon. We want to grow the next Amazon.
That's right.
Right? I mean, that is, the communities that are doing economic development well are growing their companies from within. Right? They're figuring out creative ways to make them better, to lift them up, because really that's where the true job growth really is. I mean, yes, there's a lot of projects out there, and yes, you have ability to attract them, but you're also competing with hundreds of other communities. So being able to look in your own community for growth, I think is really where the success lies.
Yeah.
Then, the entrepreneurship side of things, right? I mean, that is, I'll use an example. McKinney, Texas. They're in Collin County. That's just north of. They're near Dallas. They're in the DFW area. I'm there a lot. I should understand. But no, they're doing a fantastic job with they have what's called the Innovation Fund. It's one of the first to do it, and they've grown over 40 companies in their region just from the ground up. The Innovation Fund is a grant that they receive. It's from $50,000 to $500,000 based on the stage of per company that they're in. They are the model for growing an innovation hub, right? They're doing a fantastic job, but they've been able to basically grow 40 companies in their region, and the idea is that they have to stay there for 3 years.
Right. That's there.
Of those companies that have stayed there for 3 years, 100% of them are all still there.
Wow.
Because they invested in them early.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they didn't invest in a building, they invested in a company.
People, yeah.
Right? And they grew from the ground up, and they built that relationship early on. So again, homegrown, right? I mean, I think that is where the true economic development wins can happen.
That's when we, one of the first times that Nick and I met, he brought out a group of consultants here last year. Right? September 25th?
Yeah, it was in spring.
Was it spring? Okay.
Yeah.
He brought a group here, and they got to witness our Williamson County schools. We have the Entrepreneurship Center.
It's fantastic.
It was amazing, where you have students who are building businesses at Franklin, or in the Innovation Center that serves all of Williamson County schools, but it's on the Franklin High School campus. And they're building these businesses, and then they go through a Shark Tank style presentation, and there's actually angel investors who will fund these, but just amazing. But thinking about that, like that early, and then putting that bug in kids' ears, like this may be a career opportunity for me, creating something and building something. To your point,
I'm trying to put it in mind. Like he's going to be 12 this in May, and there was one student that was taking the garbage can from the top of the house to the bottom of the curb, right? And he charged $2, right? But he did it for the entire neighborhood. And I said, what a great summer job, right? To just go ahead. I mean, but he's learning how to build a business, right?
That's it, and that's where it starts, right? This kid learns, well, then he's learning about how money moves through, and P&Ls and balance sheets. Like, it's not just a trash business; it's this skill set you're building for students and teaching them that this is actually something that I could. So I just think, to your point, that's one of our pillars of our economic development strategy is entrepreneurship for that.
Maybe you want to start my own. We got, my wife likes, we got a lot of Amazon boxes. I could start a business just breaking down Amazon boxes.
I'm glad they're at your house too, because they're at mine a lot as well.
I can't even imagine how many on our doorstep right now. We saw a UPS plane flying over. We said, "There's all our packages."
They just drop it off. Well, let's talk a little bit about quality of life. It's considered in terms of the factors that we're hearing about, because when consultants come to us, they already know all about Williamson County, right? They have looked at all of our data. They've looked at all of our metrics. They know more about Williamson County in terms of granular data than I could ever dream of knowing. So that quality of life is consistently higher and higher on the list. What factors are we talking about specifically? Like when you travel across the country, you're talking to us, what are they looking for?
Yeah, I mean, we experienced some of it yesterday, right? I mean, families that have, great green space, a great place to take your kids to a park. I mean, restaurants matter, right? I mean, a great food scene, it matters. I know it sounds like maybe it shouldn't, right? But I mean, a great restaurant scene, walkability matters. I mean, entertainment is a big deal. I want to say climate matters, but I don't know if it necessarily does as much anymore, but it does still, play. I mean, you see the workforce that has shifted from the Midwest, right? That is, a lot of it's come south. I mean, I live in Michigan, right? We've had a really, really hard time retaining our talent. A lot of them have moved to Tennessee, a lot of them moved to Texas, a lot of them moved to Southeast. So, there is still part of that matters. But I really do think like a sense of community right now. Everybody right now is looking for face-to-face.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I have such a phone fatigue that I've had over the years, and I've really tried to dial it back this year more than everybody. Everybody right now really wants to have a sense of community where they can go and they can meet people and make friendships that last. So I think having a community that comes together, that you have places that you can go to have those connection points, right? So they have to be intentional. Right, it can't just be, hey, people move here and they'll find us, right? Yeah. They'll open up an app and they'll go on a dating app and they'll find you, or they'll meet people at a networking event. You have to figure out ways to be intentional about bringing people together, and that's how people talk, right? They say, hey, geez, I've been living in Williamson County for the last decade or so, and it's just such a great, I just love the people, right? I mean, that's part of why I live in Southwest Michigan. I'm from the east side of the state, a little north of Detroit. I live in a little south of Kalamazoo, but no better, no worse. It's just very different. Yeah. East side of the state.
I was there last year for one of your events.
Yeah,
beautiful.
That's right.
I really enjoyed our time there.
Yeah, but I live there because it's a very connected city. I can walk down the street and say hi to everybody, right? I mean, that's just kind of who I am, but it's that type of vibe there,
Sure.
where it isn't like that on the east side of the state, right? Again, it's no better or worse, it's just not what fits me.
Yeah.
But I think there's a really big drive right now towards that sense of community.
Yeah, and Matt made a good point about growth, and it's protecting what you care about. And he said that, I'm not going to say it as eloquently as he did, but that's a big part of it. In a growing community like Williamson County, with so many people coming in, protecting that vibe, that creative vibe, or whatever it is, the rural, is really important. I also read a book a few years ago, our team did, about economic development done across the country in several different places. And it was a husband and wife duo who went and studied these different communities. I cannot remember the name of the book off the top of my head now, but one of the things that they found in common with all of the cities who had done really well in terms of placemaking and driving economic activity were greenways. Having places that people bike and walk was a high priority for those lists. So
Sure.
communities you only have so many resources. So, but that was one of the things that came up.
Well, you mentioned books too. There's a fantastic book. I'm in the middle of it, so I'm not going to say that I finished it, but there's a fantastic book I recommend. And even though that we're not in the restaurant business or the hotel business, we're in the people business, right? And the way your community shows, right? I mean, is important. So there's a fantastic book. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Goodyear.
Right. Yep.
Fantastic. He owned 11 Madison Park. It was the #1 restaurant in the world for I don't know how many years, but the main point was the way he took care of people. And if a community can take care of its people, then it's going to make a name for itself just naturally, right?
I think we do that really well in Williamson County. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but 130 something nonprofits. Like, you have people who serve people in this community, and that's something we're really proud of. There's a number of those in this room. We also have a gift back from one of them there. So read a little bit about Brightstone when you have a chance.
Yeah, well, people are your #1 asset.
Absolutely.
It's not close.
Talk a little bit about communities that maybe are competitive with us. So I think Raleigh, Charlotte, Tampa now is one I hear about a lot. What are they doing well, and what should we be paying attention to, especially as it relates to talent?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll just be honest, unfortunately, cost of living is gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, your competitors are, again, I mentioned Collin County, that's a competitor of yours, that's
Texas, is that McKinney?
That's in Texas, yeah. So it's Frisco, Plano,
yes, that's
and Allen.
that's right, yeah.
So they're doing a great job, right? The cost of living is a little bit lower. Again, they're throwing incentives at companies, so they are going to win. There's a couple of counties in Georgia right now, that Forsyth County, Clinton County,
I'm hearing
right?
a lot,
Again, they're throwing incentives at them, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, right? To see long term how that works. But in the short term, right, they're winning, right? In that sense. And then if you look at Wake County, you mentioned North Carolina. I mean, their education system right now.
Research.
Wake, the NC State, Raleigh, and North Carolina too. They have that talent pool that's there. So I think right now, to be competitive, you really have to focus on attracting talent.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what every company's that's what they look for. What are your young families doing? What are #1 childcare we talked about earlier? Huge conversation.
But again, it goes back to you may not be able to attract large numbers, but then if you can't attract large numbers, you have to figure out how you're going to retain the large numbers of the workforce, right? Because if they leave and you're not attracting, then you end up like Michigan, right, where we weren't attracting any talent and we were losing it, right? They called it the brain drain or bleed. So I mean that was we still have a hard time.
Yep.
So,
one of the things Matt said earlier that I've seen personally in Williamson County is that our businesses are our businesses are someone else's best prospects. So last year I was working a pretty significant deal, and Ohio was throwing money at this company. It's still an active project, so I can't speak about it, but we know that our wins, our Nissans, our large employers are somebody else's biggest fish on the line. So making sure
you gotta really love it.
Totally,
yes.
It's because it's not just the company losing. That's when we talk about some of these terms or incentives. It's not just companies leaving. It's my neighbor's employer, right? It's that my kid's friend's dad.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's these people that we know who are employed and are making a living for their families. so important.
But that goes back to making this sticky, right?
Yeah,
that goes back
absolutely,
to building your community from within and making it so they don't want to leave. Like,
That's right.
hey, I don't want to leave Annalisa. Like, we've built such a great friendship.
Yep.
Our kids play ball together.
Yep.
Just things like that really do, I think, you can tug on the heartstrings a little bit.
Get them creating that home place.
For sure.
So we've got just a few more minutes. Let's kind of look into the future. Talk about AI. What are consultants saying about AI? We know in RMAC we do this survey every year, polling the business community. What are the things that you're paying attention to? I think I wrote it down. 76% of businesses in Williamson County feel positive about the impact of AI. What are you hearing from the consultants, and where do you see business going as it relates to AI?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of thoughts on it. I mean, it's still like drinking from a fire hose with AI, right? You're learning something new every day. I mean, AI has right now a huge misconception on, the amount of power and water that it uses. I mean, they're doing a great job of being more efficient with, how those resources are used. So I think it's important to know that the messaging behind a lot of that kind of stuff is you understand the real facts of it.
Yeah.
But the reality is AI, I mean, I can do things that would take 5-6 hours. I can now do that in 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to allow us to do different things.
Yeah.
I think from a standpoint of jobs is we don't, my kids, I mean, the jobs that we have today, they're not going to do them.
Yeah.
Right? So what I've heard in the rooms is that, companies really need to do a good job of working with their education systems and saying, hey, these are the skills that I think we're going to need in 10 years, and make sure that those programs are in place and that the curriculum in schools, not just in elementary and middle and high school, but in the college system, university system, to make sure that those curriculums are going to match up with the skill sets that are needed in 10 years, because they're not going to be the same as they are right now.
Which is tricky because they're making guesses too, right? Like as technology evolves, they're thinking, well, we think this is what we're going to need. Well, I'll tell you, Matt Largen's paying for one, but getting a job of 3 with AI now. So I'm just, throwing it out now.
Yeah.
No, it's helped me for sure. And I think that's what it'll do with workforce is suddenly the productivity. I mean, I'm not a tech person and won't even pretend to be, but the productivity increase, I think, is going to be a huge benefit to business.
It will be, and I don't think you should be as scared of, hey, the person's going to go away.
Right.
Because the human nature is we crave people. Right? We really do. We want to interact with humans, right? So I don't think that's going to be an issue. But again, the skill sets, knowing what those are going to be, and maybe you don't have to know, but you have to start you have to start having conversations about what that might look like, so you can start developing those skills. Because if you don't have them, then you're really going to struggle to retain that talent.
And it's infrastructure, right? Everything all built on some level of educational infrastructure where we're saying, hey, we're not sure, but we need to be able to do X, Y, and Z now because we know that's what's needed now. And it reemphasizes the importance in K-12 business higher ed relationships, like really leaning into those relationships. I came from Williamson County Schools before I worked with Williamson Inc. And one of my biggest challenges was that business pivots quick, right? And schools, higher ed, move like a glacier. They're just a little slower. They're thinking about decisions for students and they're having to have their curriculum approved and all that. But those relationships are crucial to make sure that they're talking and all. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, we got just a couple more minutes. Any final thoughts or any takeaways for the people in the audience who are elected officials, business leaders, parents? What should they take away about this conversation, and what would you say is maybe the future of this work we do, both in the recruitment and retention space?
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot going for you here. I can tell you that. I mean, spending a couple of days in Williamson, I've obviously been here before, but spending a couple of days with my family, knowing like, hey, this is what when we were here, we stayed at South Hall, right? So
That was great.
I didn't think I was gonna, be living like that with my family, but being able to kind of do life here and understand that, hey, this is a great place to live and work, right? You have a lot of things going for you. I think, going back to the incentives, not using them as a strategy, but as kind of one of those things in your back pocket as a tool to use. But I think, again, investing in your young talent is going to be critical. Figuring out how to make housing affordable it's everything.
Such a,
right?
like Stephanie said, such a multi-layered issue.
Yeah,
right?
but it's going to be more critical here than it is in, you know, maybe in a neighboring
Yeah.
county. So I mean, I think working together and figuring out what that looks like, but just making sure that you have a long-term vision in play with your community, I think is just making sure you're all on the same team.
Yeah.
And have honest conversations. Have a scoreboard, right? Every economic development community should, or organization should have a scoreboard, right? It's different for everybody.
Sure.
You should figure out what, you know, 9 or 10 metrics are going to be success, you know, are going to mean success. Because for you, you know, job creation may not be your number one story of
Right.
how you had a successful year. It could be, hey, did we raise the median income?
Yep.
Right? Did we make it so, you know, housing was more affordable? Did we add, you know, 20 new teachers?
Yep.
Just things like that I think you have to figure out what your scoreboard
Yeah.
looks like, right? And make sure that it's aligned with, you know, everybody else in the room.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your family with us.
Yeah.
We're so grateful you'd make time to be in Williamson County.
Well, before we go, Anna, at least I know this is your last day, right? Does everybody know it's your last day?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm glad I didn't, you know, spill the beans, but it's your last day. I know you're making, I probably should have asked that first. But I know that you're making a decision to, you know, spend time with your family and follow your heart. And I have something for you that this is, I don't know if you know, true north, right? Your heart follows true north, right? And this is a compass for you, just to always remember that your heart always follows true north.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Annalisa, especially for the last 6.5 years of great service. And before that, with the school system, too. I think Annalisa's point about being involved with the schools and transition into work in economic development was everything. So investing in young talent, man, just being able to do life here, right? I think sometimes we take it for granted, but it's nice when someone comes from the outside that can remind us of those things, too. And I will say, probably the biggest takeaway for me is collaboration really is everything. How are we're not always going to agree, nor should we. In fact, we all agree that's not how you get good ideas. Ideas come with that creative friction, but as long as you're all having this honest conversation about how to move the community forward and really benefit here, the people here, I mean, here are the people that have grown up here, I think that's really, really critical. So again, I go back to, I believe the slide that's up, Katie, is that slide earlier? Maybe it's not. I don't see it on there. But yeah, I think this really, really important. What Nick said, how a community looks, feels, and functions, again, a direct result of the elected leadership of how it functions. That's really important. So, we've got about 15 minutes for a break, so enjoy the coffee, visit the booths in the back. We appreciate the exhibitors being here. We'll be back at 10 o'clock for our final session. Thanks.